Then, hello everyone. We are 4 minutes late, but still we are alive and we are rolling. I have Mark here with me from Xerius, and
Yeah.
I'm extremely hi Mark. I'm extremely grateful to Mark for finding time for sharing this important information with us because we all know that registering a business in Belgium can be definitely a tricky thing. And I'm talking from my experience as well. When I first registered for the first attempt of being an entrepreneur, I registered as a full-time entrepreneur, and it definitely wasn't the best solution at that point. And only later I have figured out that you can actually register as a complementary independent. How is it in Flemish, Mark?
Bijberoep.
Bijberoep. Yeah, exactly. So you can register your business while you're actually still doing your 9 to 5 job. Well, it's not compulsory that it's 9 to 5, but we will, Mark will elaborate on it a little bit later. But that was a savior, because you take your time to understand how the whole system works. So it's like a sprint, the preparation period for you to go for full-time independent. So it's kind of a learning curve. So if you have any questions, sharing the presentation now, and off we go. So bring it here. I will remove myself from the screen, so I will leave Mark and the presentation, but I can hear Mark and I can see your comments and posts. By the way, tell us where you're listening us from, and if you already registered as a business or you have tried already. So share your experience. Okay, I disappear.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Marc Hellemans from Xerius. And today, especially, we're going to talk about starting as self-employed, but more specific in a secondary occupation. Now, first of all, who are we? Who is Xerius? Well, Xerius is actually an organization who helps and assists employers, professionals of liberal professions, all kinds of independent, everybody who works as an independent. And we do this from the start till after the pension. So the whole career or the whole period a person works as an independent. Now, we are not small. We do this for about 180,000 independents or self-employed people, and we start up about 100 businesses a day. So that's quite a lot. That's with 200 persons. We do that, 200 experts, and it's about 3,500 partners who we work with, mostly accountants and bookkeepers. So if you want to start as an independent with a secondary activity, well, it's actually 95% the same as starting as a full independent. The only thing is, you of course need to have a salaried occupation. Salaried occupation that has to be at least 50%. So you have to work at least half time to be able to work as an independent with a secondary activity. Anna, can you go a little forward in the presentation? Yes, one more. And one more. and one more. Okay, so these things, these are the requirements um, which you have to do before you can start, and they're actually exactly the same for somebody with a main activity as a secondary activity. It's exactly the same. The two purple balls are the most important things. That's the registration in the enterprise counter and the registration with the Social Security Fund. Now, both Xerius does both things, but before anyone can register as an independent at the enterprise counter, you have to have a professional bank account. So that's actually the first thing you need to do. You need a professional bank account, and then you can register your enterprise at the enterprise counter. Now, the reason you have to do that is because you need an enterprise number. That's essential if you want to start your activity. And you also have to be in the database where all the government services work with. So think about taxes, think about TVA, think about Social Security for the employers. All those things, they work with the database in which you have to register as a commencing entrepreneur. Okay, so once that's done, then eventually you need a registration VAT if you need it, because not all activities need that. But if you buy things and you want to get back the VAT you paid, then of course you need a registration VAT. You can also do that with the enterprise counter, so it's at the same place. Then the registration Social Security Fund. Every independent, be it as a main activity or a secondary activity, needs to have a social security fund and pay social contributions. Now, how many or how much social contributions you pay depends on your revenue, depends on your income. It is about 20.5%, and the percentage of the contributions you pay are exactly the same in main activity as in secondary activity. So the percentages are the same. The only difference is that in the main activity, the minimum you have to pay and social contributions, but the very minimum amount is 739 euros per quarter. And that is based on an income of about 14,000 euros a year. And that is the minimum. So an independent in main activity who has a bad year and earns to let's say he earns nothing in a certain year, then he still has to pay 739 euros every three months or every quarter. And that is because he needs his social security. I mean, he needs pension, he needs health insurance, children allowance, all the rights as an independent. And you can only get those rights when you pay at least the minimum. So at least those 739. As a secondary activity, you already have those rights because you are at least 50% salaried. So you have pension, you have social security for your health insurance, you have children allowance, all those things. You already got those. You can't have them double. So as an independent, you don't have those rights because you already have them as a salaried person. And that is why there is no minimum there. So in a secondary activity, if you pay if you earn less than 1,500 euros a year, then you pay nothing. Then it's just an administrative action you have to take, the registration Social Security Fund, but you don't pay anything. Once your income goes up, for example, you have 5,000 euros a year, then you pay 20.5% on those 5,000 euros or on 10,000 euros. But you pay exactly on the amount of income you have. And that's the difference with a main activity, where if you have 10,000 euros, you still have to pay on those 14,000 euros minimum contributions. Okay, that's the main difference. Anna, can you go ahead with the presentation? Okay, one more, yes, because it's not only main activity and secondary occupation, but there are different types of self-employed. The two most used are main activity, of course, but also secondary activity. But then you still have student independent. That's something that exists from 2017. And this gives students who are still in school or in university, they have the chance to become independent with a minimum or non-contributions. If they stay with their income beneath 6,700 euros a year, then they don't pay anything. So that gives them the possibility as student to taste from the entrepreneurship and to start something without already and immediately having to pay contributions and all that thing. So they can, it's actually to promote entrepreneurship. So you can start as a student, but you'd not necessarily pay contributions. Retired independent, also a possibility. Somebody has retired as a salaried person, for example, but still, let's say he's only 62 and he wishes to have another activity as an independent. Then also, because he has rights on pension, then he also doesn't have to pay full contributions. So there's also um, possibility to do it as a retired person to be an independent. And then married people and widows also have the possibility, if they can't do a secondary activity. For example, I already told that for a secondary activity you need to have a salaried activity at least 50%. But if you don't have that, if you, for example, if a housewife, for example, she is not salaried, but she wants to do an activity as an entrepreneur, then still that's possible. When she's married, she can use the social rights of her husband, or the other way around. The husband can use the social security of the wife, and then start as an independent with the same contributions and the same possibilities as a secondary occupation. So you see, you have more than two types of independent. There are actually five. Okay, next slide, please. Now, how does it work? How do those contributions get calculated? Well, the contributions always are dependent from the income you have. And I told you you pay 20.5%, but how? Well, they start from the gross income, always. You always start from the gross income, so everything you have concerning income goes into one pot, and then all your business expenses can be deducted. Things you buy, your car, your computer, paper, personnel costs, social contributions also, because as an independent, also the costs of the social contributions are deductible, are tax deductible. So that's also a cost. And the thing you remain with, the net taxable income, that's the income where you eventually are going to pay 20.5% contributions on. That's the way the contributions are calculated. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this I already told more or less. It's not, well, being a self-employed is a choice, but secondary or main activity is not. What do I mean by that? Well, it is not that you can choose whether it'll be main activity for you or secondary activity. It purely depends on what you already do as activity. So when you are salaried, I told you you have to have at least 50% as a salaried person. You have to work at least 50% or more, of course. But that defines under which type of independent you will work. So once you have those 50%, it'll always be secondary profession. except for people who teachers. If you are a teacher and you are a tenured teacher, needs 60%, non-tenured 50%. So that's one exception on those 50%, but most of the employees only need 50%. So once you work 50%, always your secondary activity as independent is as a secondary activity. If you have less than 50%, for example 40, then your independent activity will be your main activity, even if you still work 40% as a salaried person. So it's very important that you have those 50% at least. It's also important when during the years you do your activity, let's say you lose your salary job, then it's very important to immediately react on your independent activity, because from the moment you don't have your salaried activity anymore, it immediately changes and your secondary activity as an independent becomes your main activity. And that is very dangerous because you will have to pay the minimum contributions at least. So then let's say you pay no contributions in your secondary activity as an independent. Suddenly you lose your job as a salaried person. Then immediately per quarter, you will have to pay 739 euros as a main activity independent. So that is why those 50% is so important. And if something changes in that situation, you have to immediately react on that and contact us for that. Till in the worst case, to immediately stop your activity, not to create enormous accounts that you have to pay afterwards. Okay, then the next slide. Here you see how the system of paying contributions works, because if somebody starts in January 2020, for example, being it a main activity or a secondary activity is of no importance here. But when you start, let's say the 1st of January, then in 2020, we as a social security fund don't know anything about your income, because you are going to do your tax in 21, and in 22, when the taxes have got your real income for 2020, then they'll give your real income to us and we can calculate your contributions. But before 2022, we don't know your exact income. And that is why we give you two options. Or you start with a minimum contributions, or second possibility, you choose provisional contributions. Now, what is the difference? When you start with minimum contributions, if you are main activity, then you start with, you've seen that, the 739 euros every 3 months. If you are secondary activity, then you can start with an amount of 80 euros every 3 months. Those 80 euros are calculated on an income of those 1,500 euros income a year. So if you go beneath those 1,500, then you'll also get your 80 euros back in 22. Let's say that because those 1,500 euros is really the border, the line from which you have to pay social contributions, 20.5%. So €1 less, 1,499, let's say, then you pay nothing as a secondary activity. You pay no contributions, and you'll get the contributions you paid in 2020. You'll get those back in 22. And that's the difference also with main activity. There you pay those 739, which you never get back because that's the minimum. Okay. Yes, next, please. Oh, this is difficult to read. Yeah, okay. These are just those contributions as secondary activity, bijberoep, as we say it. You see here very clearly that 1,548 euros, that's the amount from which you start to pay contributions. And then the contributions are 81 euros every 3 months. If you have less income that year, so for example 1,400, then you don't pay anything. You'll get those 81 euros back after 2 years, of course, because after 2 years, when we get your income from the tax, then we are sure that you were under those 1,548 euros. So that's why. If you earn money between 1,548 and 60,000 a year, you pay 20.5%. So that's the exact same amount of contributions than is the main activity. Exactly the same. Why those 60,000? Well, because 60,000 is also the maximum for pension. As an independent, you start making pension more and more depending on your income, because you pay percentage contributions. So the more contributions you pay, the more pensions you will get. But that goes only till 60,000. So if somebody makes, let's say, 80,000, he doesn't get more pension than a person who makes 60,000. If you, and that is why between 60,000 and 89,000, that's the next category, you pay 14%, because you don't pay any more for pension. Pension is out of it because you already have the maximum pension at that moment. So that is why on every euro you earn over 60,400, you pay only 14% and not 20%. Okay? And you can never pay more than on 89,000. That's the maximum. So every euro you make over 89, you pay nothing. Okay? So that's how the contributions are put together. Now, what is important, what is also important, is that you know that there's a big difference between main activity and secondary activity concerning the rights you have. And that's the next slide. Here you see all the rights that somebody with a main activity as an independent has. Disability, medical costs, maternity benefits, child allowance, pension, transitional allowance. What's that? For example, that's very actual now with Corona. For example, the Horeca is closed. They are obligatory closed, and they get money during the period they are closed, and that money comes from those transitional allowances. So as an independent secondary activity, you already have those rights from your salaried activity, and that is why a salaried activity or a secondary activity can be a little bit less interesting concerning the rights, of course, when you only have 50%. Because when you are salaried for 50%, you'll also have only half a pension, 50%. And the problem is you pay also contributions as an independent, but you don't get any rights there, because they say you already have all your rights as a salaried person. But when you're only 50% salaried, of course, you only have 50% rights. That's the problem actually with a secondary activity. If you work full time as a salaried person, you work full time, and you do a secondary independent activity next to that, then you really have all your rights because you work 100%, and all the contributions you pay as an independent are solidarity. That's solidarity. You don't get anything more out of those contributions. There's only one exception, and that is a little bit of pension. There is one rule that says if you are an independent with a secondary activity and you pay contributions like somebody with a main activity, which means that you pay at least the minimum of main activity, then you get extra rights for pension. So that means that when you pay in the secondary activity at least 739 euros contributions, then you will get up to 25% more or in surplus on your pension as a salaried person. So there are some rights to be earned, but that's all. All the other things, health insurance, disability, all those things, you pay actually also 20.5% contributions as a secondary activity, but you cannot get more rights out of that. And that is why they call it, it's only solidarity. Okay. Are there any questions? Because I think that's the most important things I've told now. So if there are any questions.
I don't see any questions for now, so we can continue. But yeah, whoever is listening to us, yeah, ask the question, so Marc would answer them while he's here. Okay, I'll remove myself once again, so you could continue.
Yeah. So there is not much more to tell here in this situation of secondary activity. So there's, if we put everything together, then the real message is you need 50% at least, preferably more, because the more you work as a salaried person, the more rights you already have. That's important because you don't get any extra rights as an independent, as a secondary activity independent, only pension. If you pay contributions as a secondary activity like somebody in the main activity, then you can earn up to 25% more pension. But that's it. All the other rights stay the same. So somebody with a full-time salaried activity and then a secondary occupation as an independent will also have more rights than somebody with only half time, who works half time and then has a secondary activity. That's the thing that automatically happens. So that's very important. You don't choose it. It's the amount of hours you work as a salaried person that determine whether you are a main activity or a secondary activity. So it's not actually your choice. And there are possibilities if you have no salaried, if you're not salaried, then there's still a possibility you can do a secondary activity when you are married. Only when you're married. That's still a discrimination that's in the law, but it's still there. You have to be married, and then you can also do a supplementary activity. Okay, I think I've told most of the things concerning those secondary activities. If there are any questions, you can always send me a mail. No problem.
Okay, Marc, thank you so much for explaining all those quite complicated processes. Once again, yeah, you can still ask your questions, or you can send the email to Marc at marc.hellemans@xerius.be. And I hope I will see you at the next session. And Marc, if you are not against it, I would like the next session to be about registering as non-governmental organization.
Mm-hmm.
Would that
Okay.
be? Yeah,
We'll
perfect.
see what we can do.
Great. Okay, Marc, thank you so much. But anyways, I think the next session will be already in 2021 because everyone is getting ready for Christmas already, including me.
Yeah.
So I wish you upcoming Merry Christmas, Marc. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who was watching to us.
Okay. Thank you very much. And goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.